let's go ahead and talk a little bit about your involvement in shifting history. Did you create all of the scripts?
No, a lot of that was Tom. I mean, I helped feed him information and provide my nerdy knowledge, and to point him in the right directions on certain stories and aspects about Henry Ford. So it was really a collaborative effort. So.
Interesting. All right. Okay. So for anybody just joining us now, again, we are with Rob Verbsky, who is our curator and co-starred in Shifting History, our web series that is currently premiering via the museum's YouTube channel. And so I think the best thing is to just, I have a lot of questions about Henry Ford. You know how much, a lot, and how much I already know about it. So it's just a non-stop appetite for knowledge. But it's probably going to be a lot more interesting if everybody else writes in their questions. So for anybody who is watching, please feel free to type in your questions into the comments box. And so go ahead and let us know what you want to know about Henry Ford, what you want to know about the cars that he made, or the company itself. So but let's start off, Rob. So was Henry Ford, was he someone who was raised to make cars? Is that a weird question? Was it something that was nurtured? Quite often at the museum here, we see that the love of cars is kind of passed down.
Well, I mean, since when Henry Ford was a child, he nurtured to be interested in cars because they didn't exist when he was a kid. What he was nurtured to do was to, be hands-on and make things work better. I mean, he grew up on a farm, so it's that kind of DIY. You realize a problem and you need to come up with a solution, and that kind of prepared him for that sort of problem solving when he got interested in the idea of making a self-propelled vehicle without a horse.
All right. Okay. All right. So follow-up question. If I was somebody who was interested in, in the basics about Henry Ford, like the early basics, do you, or any sites or any sort of starting knowledge where somebody could get started, resources, if you will?
Well, if you really want to sit down and you've got a lot of time, there's a great book called Wheels for the World.
No, Rob, you misunderstood my question. A book that people would enjoy reading.
It's a wonderful 600-page book.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I mean, honestly, the best place to start would be to go to the Henry Ford's website. I mean, he built a massive museum in Historic Village, and the way that website is set up, you can easily go down many different threads of Henry Ford's life. So.
Because there were quite a few. I know that we're getting to starting to explore those a little bit and figure out why Henry Ford and why the T. All right, Rob, we do have a question from Lindsay. Lindsay wants to know, when did Ford start spending winters in Florida, and why did he pick Florida?
Well, I mean, Henry Ford is part of this era of Florida starting to be a winter destination in the early 1900s. So really what brings Ford down to Florida is that Thomas Edison was already wintering in Florida, and Henry Ford and Thomas Edison were friends and collaborators. So that's really when it all starts.
Hang on, so he was friends with Edison?
Yeah, they went camping together all the time.
Really?
Oh yeah. They actually, it was how much you could do with the car. It was Ford, Edison and Harvey Firestone, Firestone Tires, they organize these like 2-3 week camping trips where they take a dozen cars and equipment, and the media would follow them, and they'd get guest stars essentially. They got President Harding to come for a day and things like that. So
wow, so it was like the intellectual version of like Jersey Shore or something
yeah,
like that.
yeah, really, it's the newspaper version of a reality show. Everything is staged, everything is worked out. It's all about promoting their brand. Yeah, it is a reality show in the newspapers.
That's pretty cool, actually. All right, folks, anybody who is just tuning in, make sure to send it so that we can really see what our curator knows about Henry Ford. And I will personally send a bumper sticker to anybody who can stump him with the question, just because it's fun. All right, so I do have another question for you, Rob, specifically about the time period of Ford's life when he created the Model T. So 1911. It was
No.
a big year. Oh, sorry, you're right. 1915. It's a big year.
You said the Model T specifically, or right? Yeah, I mean that's the part where it's like Model T comes out in 1908.
See, all right, people, make your questions really hard because I can't come up with anything to stump him. So, all right, so talk about specifically the time in Ford's life when the Model T came about. Was this a collaborative effort? Was Firestone in on it? Is this something he'd been thinking about for a while, or is it something that just came about and it was just like a lottery ticket, lucky strike?
It's an evolution. I mean, he makes his first quadricycle in 1898, 1899. He creates a Ford
Quadricycle. That's like an ATV without an engine, right?
No, it's got an engine. So it's quadricycle, quad for four, and cycle wheels,
So it's an ATV.
Without being all terrain, because he built it in his garage and couldn't get it out of his garage because he built it bigger than the door. So they had to put up a wall.
That's awesome.
If anything, it was a lesson on pre-planning, because what you then have between then and the Model T coming out is this evolution of cars and also car companies. The Ford Motor Company that makes the Model T is actually, as he's trying to make all this stuff work. So it's really, the Model T is the completion, the success of a decade of trial and error and planning and development.
Interesting. All right. So we have another question from Lindsay. Lindsay, you have some great questions. Did Ford have any interest in airplanes, or was it just cars?
Oh no, he had an interest in airplanes. One of the crucial aircraft for developing commercial aviation was the Ford Trimotor, which was developed in the 1920s. And
so 3-motor.
Yes.
Nailed
One
it.
on the nose, 2 on the wings. And it's an all-metal airplane, which is actually rather impressive considering how much more metal weighs. But with create a viable commercial airline to connect various plants and facilities within the Ford Motor Company. So he was able to fly parts between factories in order to make things work better and more efficiently. So, and then as they expanded production of the aircraft, those are really the first scheduled airlines that would be akin to what we have today. They were uninsulated, so you would go deaf pretty much while flying, but you got to your destination.
Oh, sorry, I was listening. Did you, sorry folks, this is a little bit unusual. Rob, did you give Tom the link for this live stream?
Yeah, I thought I gave Tom the link.
Okay. All right. I'm really sorry, folks. Hang on. Zoom won't let me get rid of him. So give me a second. We'll see what he wants, and then we'll get back to Rob. I'm sorry, Rob. You were saying something really interesting too.
I know, airplanes and all that.
Tom, unmute yourself. Tom,
Hi.
Tom, we're live.
Yeah.
We're live to all of our followers. What are you doing in here?
Well,
I'm interviewing Rob.
Well, I was just watching the interview, and I hear you guys talking a whole lot about Henry Ford and not a lot about the unsung hero of the child, Harold Wills, who we met in our last episode. What? Hey, he was with Henry Ford since nearly the beginning, one of his chief engineers, and actually the guy that created the Ford emblem, so I'm told. I don't know if it was crayons or watercolor, but it was just a child.
All right. Well, we're live, so let's make the best of this. Rob, was child Harold Wills as important as Tom, seems to think, since now he's interrupted our entire live broadcast, putting me in a very awkward position?
Hey, Rob.
Hi, Tom. Hi, Tom. So, yeah, the child Harold Wills, who preferred to be C. Harold Wills, was very important to the early days of the Ford Motor Company. So in that sense, Tom is right that Harold was very important to the development of the Model T and the early days of the company. So,
Yeah.
And just to reiterate, child Harold Wills was an adult when he did that, correct, Rob?
yes, he was.
Okay, so what perplexes me is that why, when he aged out, he didn't just change his name to adult Harold Wills, because it's really confusing.
This is a great conversation to finish off the Zoom. All right, so you go ahead and close right out, Tom.
Me?
And yeah, you have a lot to prepare for. We have episode 3 airing today, right, folks? So lots to do. So yeah, Tom, why don't you go ahead and leave, and then me, Rob, and HR will come and have a conversation with you later.
See you later, Rob.
We'll talk later.
Bye, Sophie.
Bye. All right. Sorry about that. So we clearly need to make our calendar invites private from now on. All right. So Rob, back to the professional live stream that we invited folks to. We did have some questions come in during that interruption. Mary Ann, who also happened to appear in the series, wanted to know, some Model Ts have only 2 foot pedals, and how did they work? And she wants to make sure that you know that she really doesn't know. She's not trying to test you, even though I encourage that, folks, just for the record. Right.
I gotta be honest, I don't know that answer. So Marianne, I'm gonna check in with Warren later, who definitely knows every single model of the Model T. So he would know that best. So
good job, Marianne. I think you probably already have a bumper sticker at this point, but send me an email and tell me what you want, because you did it. All right. Larry wants to know, Rob, when was the flathead V8 introduced?
Flathead V8.
Is Larry getting a bumper sticker?
I think Larry's getting a bumper sticker.
Yeah, Larry. All right. I have a serious question. Folks, feel in. We have probably about 10 more minutes. So we want to hear your questions about Henry Ford, or any questions that you have specifically about the Model T or the series itself. Rob, before the interruption from our now shamed director and lead from the series, we were talking about airplanes and how Henry Ford obviously has had a lot to do with automobiles and airplanes. What about boats? I mean, did he go for the trifecta, or?
I mean, he never really, he didn't produce boats the way he produced airplanes or cars or Jeeps or anything like that.
But he produced them?
Huh?
Did he produce any?
Boats?
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is that a lot of Ford engines are convertible. I mean, that's the thing, is like there really isn't a transportation system that Ford products have not been used in. You know, that's part of the genius of how the Ford Motor Company was functioning in the early 20th century, was that they were so ubiquitous. The parts were so available, the knowledge was so accessible that you know, people could use it for most anything.
Rollerblades?
Rollerblades hadn't really been invented yet, so.
Oh, well.
You know,
That you know of.
That's true. It's true.
All right, we have another question from Lindsay. Gosh, Lindsay, you're just getting a bumper sticker just for being awesome today. Lindsay, Lindsay wants to know, what were some of the differences between the Model T and the Model A?
The Model T and the Model A shift, because basically in 1927, all of the other car companies like General Motors and Chrysler and all that, they've advanced their you know, vehicles so much that the Model T is really obsolete technology. So when the Model A comes out, it's a whole new car essentially. You know, among the major changes is, you know, you've got you know, you don't have to crank it anymore. It's a key ignition. It's a standard, you know, stick shift transmission. No more 3 pedals on the floor type stuff with your throttle on the steering wheel. There's a lot more creature comforts. You know, that's the other thing, is that you can much more readily go into a Ford dealership and just drive off the lot with a fully functional car, whereas the Model T was much more of a DIY vehicle. So
and Model T is your IKEA bookshelf, and you know, the Model A was a bit more, you know, gets delivered to your home from wherever people get furniture if they don't get it at IKEA, which I don't know. But I think the big question that a lot of people want to know, and I'm getting texts from Tom now because I won't let him back in the Zoom. Why go from the T all the way back to the beginning of the alphabet instead of going to U? This is a serious question, apparently. He'll just come in the office if we don't ask it on air.
You know, part of that, really, honestly, it's part of the Ford rebranding of themselves. I mean, they had already gone through the alphabet. I mean, there's Ford, like, that's how the Model T comes about, because that's just where they were in the alphabet. You know,
they'd already gotten all the way to the T before they got something right.
Well, that they got something as successful. They sold thousands of all these other cars.
So there was a Model B out there.
Essentially, yeah. I mean, some of these were one-off prototypes, but you know, we could just as easily be talking right now about the life-changing Model Q, or the life-changing Model, the life-changing Model I.
That sounds really weird, but I guess Model T could sound just as weird. So, although Warren wants us to know that some letters died on the drawing board.
It's true.
Warren, go ahead and write into the comments, because we want to know what letters died. Was I one of them? Not I, but you know what I mean. Larry also owned a 1950 panel delivery van with a flathead V8. I do know what a flathead V8 is, so luckily we don't have to go into that. All right, folks, a few more minutes to go ahead and write in any of your questions that you have about the Model T, Henry Ford, or the series itself. Rob, because we have you on live stream, and apparently we're going to be putting you on the spot because that's what I do. How does originally this, series, which is getting a lot of attention, originally it was supposed to be part of an exhibit, our Visiting Vacation Land exhibit, which is still, going to be, produced and released to the public at some point. But the question for you, Rob, is that exhibit's all about Maine, and Henry Ford's not from Maine. such a big deal for Maine itself?
Why is the Model T such a big deal for Maine?
Yeah, in Maine, or why was it? I mean, I know it was a big deal everywhere, but specifically for Maine, I was under the impression we didn't have a whole ton of roads at that
Well,
point.
that's part of the benefit of the Model T. The Model T is made for bad roads.
You said, no. You said the quadricycle thing was not off-roading. Did he all of a sudden go into ATV vehicles as well?
Well, he realized that in America in the early 1900s, basically driving on the road was, you did need an ATV. A lot of roads were dirty. Well, I mean, like they quickly turn to mud. They're not well made. There's a lot of ruts and ditches. And there's a lot of people who are going to say that Maine roads are like that today as well, particularly after the winter and all those frost heaves. But
it's nostalgic.
but it was, and so the Model T is higher off the ground compared to, say, modern cars, so that when there's big ruts and holes and ditches and things like that, the car can go over it rather than in it.
Gotcha. All right. So what we've established is that Henry Ford learned that cars have to be able to off-road a little bit, and you have to be able to get it out of your garage.
Yeah.
Keys to success. We have our last question today is, can you talk about, Lindsay wants to know, can you talk about whether women were expected, allowed, or encouraged to drive? I'm assuming Lindsay means the Model T, when the Model T came out. So, and that'll be our last question for this chat. What do you think?
In a lot of ways, the Model T was not made for women. The biggest issue being one, a crank start vehicle. It takes a lot of physical strength, where even if a woman is able to crank start it, it's not considered appropriate for them to be physically exerting themselves. And it's the same thing with a gas engine. It takes a lot more maintenance. It's greasy, it's messy. That is considered unfeminine for the era. Competing with the Model T at the time is a whole slew of electric cars, like the Woods Electric, Roush and Lang made an electric car, Detroit Electric. There's a whole bunch of these cars where you don't have to crank start it. It's an electric motor. It's much easier to run and maintain. And those are the cars that are considered appropriate for women, to the point that Henry Ford's wife drove an electric car. She did not drive a Model T.
Henry Ford's wife didn't drive.
Nope.
So it's yeah,
he bought it for her. So, I mean, he acknowledged it.
Ooh, thanks. Just another Bic pen for the history books. All right, well, huh?
Electric cars were great.
I'm not saying that they're not great. I'm just, it's supposed to be the universal car, Rob.
All right, so it's the universal male car when it comes out.
All right, well, thank you so much for sending in your questions, folks. We are coming to the end of our live stream, but just as a reminder for everybody that today at 2 p.m. on our YouTube channel, and obviously streaming in the coming days, we'll be releasing episode 3 called, I think it's Marketing the T, right, Rob? And in this one, we're going to learn all about, you know, the hype around the actual vehicle, and Tom will start to get it, much like in a few minutes when we get off the live stream. So awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Rob. I appreciate you taking time out of your day.
Oh, you're welcome. It's fun.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.